With most of Yemen's population literally starving to death, it doesn't make any logical sense that the Houthis would be physically supporting Hamas, and yet that is exactly what they're doing. The Houthis have launched multiple ballistic missiles at Israel and have also nearly shut down shipping through the Suez Canal, impacting over a quarter of the world's container traffic. Today, we're diving into why on earth the Houthis would be doing this. I'm Justin Hilton, and this is the Israel Guys. Before we can answer the why, we need to understand the who. Who are the Houthis? Now, before I get into this, it's important to understand that the history of Yemen is complicated, like very complicated. I've gone ahead and put a few of what I found to be the best videos on YouTube about Yemen's history in the description because, frankly, it's just too much to cover in this show, so you can check them out after you watch this show. So, the Houthis began in Yemen in the early 1990s as a religious group called Believing Youth. It was a Shia Muslim group, specifically from the Zaydism branch of Islam. After North and South Yemen were unified, the new demographics resulted in them shifting from a majority to a minority group. And this resulted in what was perceived as unequal representation in the government. The Believing Youth initially started as a means to strengthen the Zaydi religious identity, primarily through summer youth camps. However, in 1997, a member of parliament, Hussein al-Houthi, left his government position due to grievances and used his wealth and connections to become the leader of the Believing Youth movement. He had aspirations to start a revolution in Yemen, similar to the one in Iran in 1979. Soon, the Believing Youth morphed into Hussein al-Houthi's vision, and instead of innocent-looking summer campers, it now resembled an armed militia ready for revolution. 9/11 and also the Iraq War caused tensions to boil over between the Believing Youth and the government of Yemen, which was currently being led by President Saleh. At the time, Al-Qaeda was taking advantage of Yemen's fragile government and had set up camp in the eastern part of the country. In order to rid Al-Qaeda from Yemen, President Saleh agreed to allow America to operate in Yemen in exchange for military aid. And this caused Believing Youth to reach their breaking point. Their leader, Hussein al-Houthi, publicly criticized President Saleh, accusing him of allowing Westerners and their views into Muslim lands. Many others in Yemen shared this view, and support for Believing Youth soared. Using Iran's own slogan as a model, the Believing Youth adopted the slogan, "Allah is the greatest, death to America, death to Israel, a curse upon the Jews, victory to Islam." Fearing the growing strength of Hussein al-Houthi's Believing Youth, President Saleh decided to brutally crack down on their protests and issued an arrest warrant for Hussein al-Houthi. The Believing Youth responded with armed violence. However, shortly after the initial confrontations, Hussein al-Houthi was killed. This did not have the effect that President Saleh was hoping for, and rather than quelling the uprising, this actually gave the Believing Youth a martyr, and they adopted the name the Houthis. Okay, so there is a very simplified version of how the Houthis came to be, and again, I'd encourage you to watch the videos I've linked in the description if you want to go deeper into the history of Yemen. We can already see that nearly from the very beginning, the Houthis have had a very strong hatred for Israel in the West, and their role model is Iran. Now we're going to take a look at how this terrorist organization managed to grow from a relatively small and insignificant group to one that now frequently makes headlines across the globe.
Supporting the Houthis in Yemen.
Bombing Iranian-backed Houthi Shia militias.
Iran-backed militant targets in Yemen yesterday.
For the past 3 decades, the Houthis have been involved in Yemen's multiple civil wars, which have largely become proxy wars involving the USA, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and others, depending on which period and which war we look at. But it's important to point out that the Houthis attacked Saudi Arabia directly in 2009. This was during Yemen's 2004 to 2010 Sa'ada insurgency, also known as the Houthi Rebellion. At the time, Saudi Arabia was the leading regional power, while the Houthis were still relatively small. And this highlights the suicidal nature of the group, which we can still see strongly today. These actions also caught the attention of Iran, who up to this point, they had only been supplying the Houthis with small arms like rifles and RPGs. Iran's support for the Houthis increased significantly after this time, although given the covert nature of their support, specific details are hidden and contested. The Houthis' gamble in attacking Saudi Arabia paid off as the Saudis' ground troops proved ineffective in fighting an insurgency guerrilla war. Guys, we'll be right back with the rest of the show in just 1 second, but first, the tough economy caused by the war has caused a lot of strain in Israeli families and small businesses, which is why, if there's any way possible, we as Christians should do our best to bless the nation of Israel. I know we talk about it all the time, but products sold by small boutique businesses across Judea and Samaria are actually available for sale in the United States at pretty reasonable prices if you're willing to spend a little bit more for your honey, coffee, organic spices, olive oil, jewelry, etc. You not only get amazing high-quality products shipped to your doorstep, but you're also actively investing in the families and small businesses in Israel. You are blessing God's chosen people and building up the heartland of Israel, one purchase at a time. Go to blessedbyisrael.com and use the code INVEST for $5 off your first order. That's blessedbyisrael.com to support the families and small businesses of Israel's heartland. We'll also put a link in the description below. The Houthis got another big break in 2011 as the Arab Spring swept through the Middle East. President Saleh, who the Houthis were fighting against, lost significant support, and the Houthis took full advantage of the shifting dynamic and continued to gain ground in Yemen. As their influence in the country continued to grow, they became an ever-increasing ally of Iran, and the weapons and money being supplied to them from Iran also increased. Despite jihad being religiously motivated, it ultimately runs on money, and the Houthis have become experts at extracting that money from the local populace. In addition to the large infusion of cash and weapons from Iran, the Houthis also charge exorbitant taxes on imports. For example, a shipment coming into the port of Aden, which is currently under government control, might cost $1,500. The fees at a Houthi-controlled port would be closer to $15,000 for that exact same shipment. And you may be wondering why anyone would use a Houthi-controlled port instead of a government-controlled port, but the Houthis thought of that. In 2022, the Houthis added a 100% tax rate on any goods that were imported through a government-controlled port and then later imported into Houthi territory, effectively creating a double tax on those items and making the Houthi-controlled ports the cheaper of the two options. This significantly raised the cost of living for the civilians, driving many into extreme poverty and suffering. That is why when Israel has struck Yemen in retaliation for its drone and missile attacks, it targets its ports. The ports are a major source of funding for the Houthis. On top of this, the ports also allow for smuggling in weapons from Iran. Israel knows that without these ports, the Houthis would have a very difficult time holding on to power. When we consider that 90% of Yemen's foodstuffs are imported, these strikes cause significant challenges. Much like Hamas, who will gladly use its civilians as human shields, the Houthis are also willing to sacrifice the civilians under its control. The Houthis know that smuggling weapons into the civilian ports opens them up to attack from Israel, but they also know that the left is largely on their side. They know that the mainstream media will twist the story to frame Israel as the aggressor, and the civilians the oppressed, conveniently leaving the Houthis out of the equation. Also, they can rely on humanitarian organizations like the Human Rights Watch to do their bidding and smear Israel on the international stage, accusing them of war crimes. The Houthis have global support from quite a few unexpected sources. Despite the hardships that the Houthis are imposing on the local population, it's important to remember that many of them are ideologically driven. Much like the mothers in Gaza who are praising their sons who became martyrs wearing suicide vests, many Muslims in Yemen they're happy to sacrifice their children to Allah. No amount of bombs or starvation will change that. The slogan of the Houthis, Allah is the greatest, death to America, death to Israel, a curse upon the Jews, victory to Islam, is the overriding principle, and death and suffering in this life is seen as temporary, with the rewards promised in the afterlife eternal. Guys, let's please remember to pray for these people, because only an encounter with the living God will be able to save them, and I believe that it's only through that encounter that peace will be able to come in the Middle East. That's it for today, guys. Don't forget to check out Blessed by Israel to support the small family businesses here in Judea and Samaria. Also get incredible products at the same time. Just go to blessedbyisrael.com or click the link in the description below. As always, thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.